financial literacy, and the human condition. Welcome to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rahaim.
And we have a very special guest joining us today, Dr. Alex.
I like when we call him Dr. Alex. It's so casual.
Yeah.
We're cool.
We could call him McDreamy or McSteamy, but I didn't know if he would find that appropriate or not.
Hi, it's Francis. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for watching this video. If you're catching us on YouTube, please help us help others by clicking like, subscribe, and all notifications so you don't miss any videos. And check back for the next video. I think you're going to love it. Thanks again. For more information, you can visit us at hugyourmoney.com.
Welcome to Financial Fitness. I'm Jess Tyler, along with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rahaim. Hi.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
I am doing great, and we have a guest joining us today.
We do. We have joining us today Dr. Alexander, or Alex, Kucherov. He's double board certified in reproductive endocrinology and infertility and obstetrics and gynecology at Illume Fertility. Wow, that's a mouthful. He's helped countless individuals and couples navigate the complex and emotional journey of family building, not to mention the expense, which is why he's here today in part. But we're going to talk about the whole gamut. He's done it all with warmth, science, and compassion. So whether you're planning ahead or struggling to conceive, Dr. Kucherov probably brings real-world insight for you into fertility and the care and the hope that comes with it. So welcome to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor. Doctor. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Francis, for that amazing introduction. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So, I think people tend to think of, somebody who's a doctor who's dealing with these kinds of scientific and very complex issues as maybe a little stoic or maybe even heartless, but I believe that your journey actually is why you are this way. Do you mind talking about why you approach it in this way? Do you mind talking about your personal journey here? It's pretty sensitive, but will you tell us?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to get into it. I decided to do this as a specialty before attempting to build my family. I really enjoyed my endocrinology and reproductive medicine courses in medical school, and I did an OBGYN residency. And it was during that time I really decided that this is what I wanted to focus on, was fertility and family building. And so I went into my fellowship for reproductive endocrinology and fertility before building a family, and got married around that time. And we tried to start building our family for about a year, and actually had infertility as a couple. And because this is what I did, I decided to do an evaluation, a fertility evaluation for myself and my wife. And she's happy with me talking about this, by the way. I've talked to other people about this. The only thing that we found was that she was having basically longer menstrual cycles than typical, ovulating a little bit irregularly. And in that situation, the first line strategy is typically oral medication, just pills, to try to make the menstrual cycle happen a little bit more regularly, a little bit more obvious when ovulation is happening. We can do monitoring of the ovulation cycle in the office to make sure we know, exactly when to have intercourse, and that worked basically.
I'm really glad that you said before you told us all of these details that your wife was fine with this and you talked to her.
Yes.
Okay, so Dr. Alex, so this ended up working for you, being able to kind of regulate that. But when you were going into it, were there myths that you had heard about? I mean, obviously being a doctor, you had more information, but about male versus female infertility issues?
I think one of the common myths out there is that fertility is a strictly female issue,
Mm-hmm.
and that it is quite rare. And many of us go through our whole lives, especially women, being told, like, try to prevent pregnancy. Don't let it happen. But when you're ready for it, hey, it'll just kind of happen, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the end of it. For a lot of people, that's not true. First of all, about a third of male-female couples, there is a male factor in fertility, a sperm issue of some kind, whether that's something that is intrinsic to the male partner, whether that's something that is caused exogenously. So, for instance, taking testosterone supplements or things like that. There are lots of different things that can affect the sperm, and many times there's not obvious reason why the sperm might be affected. So, yes, about a third of couples have some component of male factor infertility, which is a lot of people. The other major myth is that infertility is rare. Totally
Mhm.
not true. About 12% of couples in the world are affected by fertility challenges. That is a lot of people, 12% of couples. And so quite common. And one of the biggest reasons it's becoming more common is that people are waiting longer to begin their families.
Right.
Back in the olden days, early 1900s, people, were married in their late teens, early 20s, and having kids very quickly and very early. And a lot of the issues that we see now around fertility really didn't come up. Some of them did, and they didn't know how to handle them appropriately. But some of the
Yeah.
things we see now, lower egg numbers as we go on in life, lower egg quality, certain sperm issues, other things related to general health that can affect fertility
Mhm.
weren't issues because people were building their families earlier. Nowadays, people are waiting longer, appropriately, building their careers, living the lives they want to lead. But it's becoming more of an issue.
I have two different friends too, and I'm wondering if you know any statistics or data on this that got pregnant really easily with the first baby, but they were trying to add, like 2 years later, a sibling, and they just could not get pregnant the second time and really didn't understand it and were really struggling with that. Is that common?
Yes. So which mean primary infertility versus secondary infertility are two pretty separate entities, and
Okay.
often have different causes for them. Secondary infertility, which means you've gotten pregnant in the past or perhaps have had a baby in the past, and now we're trying to
Hmm.
continue to build your family. Quite common. I see plenty of folks who, again, often going back to age issues, may have had their first baby when they were maybe 30 or 31, 32, maybe another one at kind of 33, 34, 35, and now maybe 37, 38, looking
Hmm.
for baby number three. Just as an example, there's a huge difference between even 35 and 38 in terms of egg quality. As an example, at age 35, you'd expect about two-thirds of embryos that you form when adding sperm to be genetically chromosomally normal. At 38, it goes down to half. At
Wow.
age 40, it's now about 40% of embryos are normal. 41, it's about 25%.
Wow.
You can
Yeah.
see how things change really quickly. So it's quite common to see that. Absolutely.
I'm sure that Illume handles this, holistically and provides support around all of these different areas, including financial, which of course we'll talk about. But what do you do, particularly, I wouldn't say particularly for men, but there must be a pride factor. There's some psychology going on here about why, who's broken and why, and how can you fix it? And then all of that must come into play. I'm thinking of the old days when people used to just say that the wife was too uptight, and if she just relaxed, they'd have babies, right? I'm
You
I'm
wouldn't
hoping we're
believe
much
you wouldn't
further
believe
along
how
than that.
often I hear that still. Oh, my
No.
auntie just said, just relax and it'll happen. That's a great one, a classic. That's an oldie but goodie. Unbelievable. But it's there. You're correct. It's there in the culture. And
Yeah.
different cultures, feel differently about different things, etc. But you're correct in the sense that there is still sometimes a perception from men that like, oh, this is her problem, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
totally inappropriate, I would say.
I bet
However,
that doesn't help.
it doesn't help. I am reassured by a lot of the couples, the male female couples I meet, where men are often actually quite plugged in to this process and are very happy to do whatever needs to be done
Mm.
to build their families. And it's actually quite
Mm.
reassuring. I don't even when I started, really practicing OBGYN about 15 years ago now, it was not really the vibes I was getting at the time from a lot of people. So I think maybe some things have changed. So I would say overall, most of the men I meet are actually pretty
Yeah.
plugged in and ready to roll.
Mm. I'm just curious, especially when you were talking about how the numbers, I guess, of viable embryos, is that how you put it, like drop so drastically as you get a little bit older? Do you recommend people taking on the expense of freezing their eggs at a certain age then if they plan on having kids?
I absolutely recommend if you can to do some kind of fertility preservation if you feel like you're not going to be ready to begin to build your family by your early 30s, let's say 31, 32, 33.
Mm.
If you're kind of around that age and haven't started building your family, haven't really, or don't have any plans to, but kind of want to keep that door open, that is really the end of the peak of your kind of fertility powers for your whole life is kind
Mm,
of the early 30s. It starts to change a bit in your kind of 35, 36, and then it changes very quickly at 37. I mean, really at 37, every year after that is a huge difference, not just in terms of egg numbers, which also go down over time,
Mm.
unfortunately, but also the egg quality. There's a major difference. So yes, if you are in your early 30s and have not considered freezing eggs, I would absolutely recommend it around that time if you can. And there are different ways to do it, and different, we talk about this with different financing options, et cetera, if there's no employer coverage. Most employers do not cover elective, what we'd call elective egg freezing. Some do, and there are certain plans that do, but unfortunately, many do not at this time.
But I know from our conversation before we get on the air that there are options. And I promise we're going to talk about that in length in the second half. But just before we go to break, can you talk a little bit about how cultures are different when it comes to fertility?
I think I've seen the gamut of how people approach fertility as something to be addressed or not addressed. And there are certain situations from anybody where people are kind of in denial about it.
Hmm.
Um, I have seen it more from men than from women, but I mostly see women in my practice because I'm an OBGYN.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but again, this is something that I think has changed, at least in my experience. Like the folks that I'm seeing now, certainly in my practice, folks are usually coming to the practice together, and want to be evaluated together. There are certainly some circumstances, and I used to see this again more in the past, but less now, where I'll see a female patient and she'll say, I don't really want to involve my male partner now. I kind of want to get checked out, is one way to say that. Make sure
Mm.
that I'm okay,
Right.
and then I'll involve him as though the male partner is like a secondary thing. But
Yeah.
it's in my opinion, it's kind of sad that folks would feel like they need to be like, well, I did all of my testing and
Yeah.
they didn't find anything wrong in quotes. So now it's
Right.
your turn versus like we're kind of in this together and let's figure it out. And it's honestly, it's a much less efficient way to go about finding out what's going on if you evaluate one person and then have to wait and do all the testing. Okay. And then we get the other
Sure.
partner in. It's like we would rather just do everything all together. Let's get it figured out and get going.
Yeah, and I think we probably want to know that both partners are interested in raising a family and having a family and starting a family. So anyway, I think this is a really interesting conversation, and I'm glad we're having it. And I'm glad that you're able to explain things in such accessible terms. So I'm going to challenge you when we come back to start explaining how we're going to afford this fertility trip given what insurance offers these days. And I know that you know your way through these waters. So I just want to thank you and prepare people when we come back. We will be talking about money and more on about infertility and the treatment of it with Dr.
all right.
Kucherov.
In the meantime, can I get your phone number, Francis?
Of course, Jess. 413-773-3333.
And you can go to hugyourmoney.com. We'll be back with part two of Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram, right here on WHMP.
Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor is underwritten by Franklin County Technical School. We build futures. Visit fcts.us or call 413-863-9561.
Welcome back to Financial Fitness. I'm Jess, along with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram, and we have a very special guest joining us today, Dr. Alex.
I like when we call him Dr. Alex. It's so
Yeah,
casual.
We're cool.
we could call him McDreamy or McSteamy, but I didn't know if he would find that appropriate or not. I think he's blushing.
My wife would love it.
I think I love your wife. Okay. All right. So I promised before the break that we would talk about money. Uh, money and infertility. Expensive stuff, right?
In our practice, especially, we take it very seriously. We have every patient that comes into our practice gets their own finance and insurance advocate who's really dedicated to that patient and helps them kind of navigate the journey of, unfortunately, dealing with insurance companies and benefits,
Yeah.
making sure that we have a direct communication with them and that the patient really understands everything that goes into it. But you're right, it is very complicated. A lot of it is based on, in this country, especially employer-based benefits. which company they work with, what those specific benefits are. A lot of it has to do with what state you live in, because every state is different about what they mandate or don't mandate the commercial insurance companies provide. Every state also has different rules regarding public insurance, Medicaid, etc., and what they may or may not cover. It's a very complicated world, but we're happy to jump into it and see.
I can
Okay.
imagine it's got to be hard to navigate too. Like, okay, you got the pressure of wanting to get pregnant so badly, but then also the pressure of it's costing so much every time you have the treatment. So the pressure of not having to go through that 2 or 3 times
Yeah.
financially as well. How do you balance that?
It's difficult. I think,
Yeah.
as you're alluding to, it's very, very difficult. As from a medical standpoint, unfortunately, we have to be acutely aware of what the coverage is for folks. So as an example, so every insurance company is different, but there's one insurance company that we work with that they will cover 4 attempts of fertility treatment, and
Mm-hmm.
they make no distinction between the absolute lowest level of fertility treatment, which is like oral medicine,
Mm-hmm.
versus IVF. They make no
Oh
distinction
boy.
between the things. You get 4 attempts at whatever it is.
Oh,
There's even caveats to that, whereas some insurance plans say, okay, you get 4 attempts at this, you get 3 of this, you get 2 of this.
Yeah.
Um, some have no limits at all, and some have even more complicated plans. So yes, it's very, very complicated. But we have I mean, fertility groups generally have finance folks to help navigate this.
Don't you love those little cuties, insurance companies? Oh boy.
mm-hmm.
So I was really happy when you said they'll pay for 4 attempts until you said, but they don't differentiate between the kinds of attempts. So are there grants available to help people have children? And how does that work?
Yeah, so there are many groups out there, typically nonprofit groups, that if there are financial challenges, can help folks. So, for example, in our practice, there's a grant called Nest Egg, which is they all have very cute names. A lot of these grants. So there's Nest Egg, and these are for folks that there's various, there's typically specific criteria, but you can get financial assistance for fertility treatment.
Yeah.
There are grants I know out there for folks that have experienced recurrent pregnancy losses
Mm.
to get fertility treatment. There are often cultural and religious based fertility grant options. I certainly know that for the Jewish community, there are grants out there on a local and national basis to help pay for fertility treatment as well.
Oh,
Um,
that's great.
yeah.
But wait, there's more. What else can
Well,
what else can you tell us about
um,
money?
so there are plenty of companies that fertility groups work with to help fund fertility treatment. So, for example, our group works with a company called Sunfish. Again, a very cute name,
Yeah.
that has grants and loans and different packages to help navigate fertility costs. So, for example, if you were to do self-pay for a fertility treatment cycle, in our practice, you have to pay basically everything up front in order to be able to do it. Whereas with this, third party, you can pay them over time, and then they will pay us to cover everything,
Ah,
which is really nice.
it is
There's
really
all,
nice.
all
Yeah.
kinds of different options from that standpoint. So I'd recommend talking to the fertility group that you're working with to see what kind of options there are that are available.
Yeah, I think it's really important to not just say, well, we can't afford it. It's one thing to not be able to afford to care for your family. It's another to not be able to afford to start your family.
The one other thing I would suggest is that check with your employer about what the coverage is. Certainly in many states there are mandates now for fertility coverage. Often small employers, so under 100 employees, those types of insurance plans are not necessarily required to cover fertility diagnosis and treatment, but the larger companies may be required to do that. And within even the company, there might be multiple different plans that are available to you. There are on the health insurance exchanges, there are also insurance plans that you can buy that do cover fertility. I certainly know that in New York and Connecticut, the top tier, the gold and platinum plans, you have to kind of dig for them. And you may have to call the insurance company because they don't post totally everything on those marketplaces. But many of them do cover fertility coverage, do cover fertility treatment. And although it might be more on a month-to-month basis than some of the lower level plans, over time you will actually save money because of, unfortunately, how expensive fertility treatment can be.
Yeah, now
Is
you're in my camp. Oh, I'm sorry, Jess. Go ahead.
that's okay. Is this something where, for instance, how you can do the coverage for most works where you don't pay taxes, like if you put so much aside for health,
Oh, a
you
flex
know,
span? A flex plan?
yes, yes. I'm wondering if you would this fall under that?
Yes, you can absolutely use HSA
Yeah.
accounts and that type of thing to pay for fertility
Yeah.
treatment. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, but he said something more interesting to me than that as a problem solver about money. And it was the tip, the hint that, first of all, you need to be proactive and check on your insurance and be an advocate for yourself and say, does my plan cover this? How can I get a plan that covers this? But there was yet another little thing in there where people are considering, they'll change jobs because this plan this company offers a 401k or this company offers that. If you're thinking of changing your job, this is a question you might want to ask going in. What's your coverage for infertility? Are you more than 100 employees? Can I talk to your health company? How can I find out? Because this is really worth some dollars to you if you need this kind of care. What about, there's no more pre-existing coverage, pre-existing condition problem with coverage, thank goodness. So do they try to get around it with infertility and say you've tried before? How sneaky are these little insurance companies when you're trying to get them to pay for this stuff?
So there's two major situations where there could be issues sometimes getting coverage. The first one is related to the definition of infertility.
Mm.
And specifically, the definition of infertility is really tr for a heterosexual male-female couple. Important to make that distinction for what I'm about to say. Basically, trying to conceive for a year under age 35 with unprotected intercourse, basically. Above age 35, basically 6 months. Above age 40, the definition is a little bit nebulous. You could kind of make the argument you should do fertility treatment immediately if you're over age 40 because of those
Mhm.
egg quality issues we talked about before. So that's one thing. If you're in a situation where you're 33, you've been trying for 6 months, there's no obvious thing going on. There's no like, it's different if you're like, well, I'm 33, I've been trying for 6 months, but I had ruptured appendicitis and they had to do surgery and et cetera. You might think maybe the tubes might be injured from that. That's a different story.
Mm.
But like nothing obvious going on, they might say like, hey, you have to try for a year before we're going to cover any of this. The
I'm
other
wondering who's
situation.
monitoring that.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do they know?
So they look at the documentation from the providers, from the doctors and so on. It's of course we have to document everything in an appropriate and correct and legal way. And that's
No,
very,
what we meant was who's monitoring how long you've been trying for.
Right.
oh, it's a good point, isn't it? Good
And
point.
it's an important thing to know going in. And once again, here we are talking about arming yourself with knowledge before you go to bat.
Exactly.
Because if you know these answers, you can maybe provide a better story about what you need. Um,
The,
so, yeah.
the other thing that we see quite often is for same-sex couples. So clearly, if you are, for instance, in a same-sex female couple, you have, and this is the definition of infertility, this has been changed in the past year or two, you have male factor infertility. If you're in a female-female couple, you have no sperm in that relationship, right? So you need to use sperm donation to begin to build your family.
Right.
And that is infertility. You need sperm.
Mm.
Now in those situations, I see a lot of folks that they have different thoughts and opinions about how they want to build their family. For instance, they might want one partner is going to provide the eggs and also carry the pregnancy, but sometimes they want to do reciprocal fertility
Mhm.
treatment where one person provides the eggs, but the other partner carries the pregnancy.
Right.
And in that situation, that first partner has to do IVF to get the eggs out to then be fertilized, and then the embryo is transferred into the other partner. Sometimes insurance companies might say, we're not going to pay for that because you have not had, in quotes, sperm exposure
Uh,
for
Mm.
enough months
huh.
to be able to justify the cost of doing IVF. So they might say that that first partner has to do IUI or insemination using donor sperm for X number of months before they would cover the IVF treatment. They have
Mm.
to prove that they are not able to conceive that way. But that's the opposite of what the couple wants to do. The couple doesn't want to do
Right.
that. They want the eggs from one partner and the other partner to carry. So it's
Right.
very difficult to navigate.
I have a question about that. If one partner is providing the eggs, the other partner is carrying them, is there any sort of risk of rejection like there would be in transplant or anything else like that?
It's a great question. The evidence does not support that. No, actually.
Interesting.
There are equivalent pregnancy rates. There's really fascinating stuff. We don't have to get into the biochemistry and the biology of this
No,
so
it's
much, but
fascinating.
what's really one of the more fascinating things I think is that, when you carry a pregnancy, your uterus directs traffic genetically, and turns certain genes on and off. Again, we don't have to get into the details, but basically the uterus tells the pregnancy to basically add hydrogen atoms to certain genes to turn them on and turn them off. And so
Right.
that's a very interesting, unique, it creates a unique pregnancy and unique baby so that even though you might be carrying an egg from one person and a sperm for another person for that embryo, you might think, I don't have anything to do with this pregnancy except the carrying part, which is very important, of
But you
course.
do.
But you
Yeah.
do, and you're actually shaping that pregnancy in a way that's unique to you. Whereas if that embryo was transferred into another person, that would be a different human being that was born.
Well,
Unbelievable.
and I would think that that would be, in fact, the reason that some same-sex couples want to do it this way, so that it is a baby of both people, a human from both people. That's fascinating. I would talk to you forever about this sort of the medical part of it, the whole LGBTQ versus heterosexual cultures. All of the differences that are here. Um, I think that I think I should give you a closing word, though. Is there something that we haven't asked you that you would like to discuss before we go?
I would encourage folks that are interested in building their families to talk to a fertility specialist earlier rather than later, especially if it's been 6 months, a year, you're trying on your own. Um, the worst case is that you do an evaluation and you find something that's, well, okay, everything's okay. You can keep trying a little bit longer. That's fine. At least you know about it. Part of our job is to empower people to make decisions about their lives, just like that's your job is you empower people to make financial decisions.
That's
Part of
right.
my job is to empower people to make fertility and reproductive decisions. And if you find something that you can act on, which is many times we can act on things that we find, it's like, okay, at least we know about it, and now we can make some changes and assist with this. Not all fertility treatment is, super high level fertility treatment like IVF. Most
Right.
people don't do high level fertility treatment. They do much lower, mellow things to improve the chances on a month-to-month basis. So I would encourage folks to reach out to a fertility specialist to discuss it.
Thank you. Yeah, I would think that even things like diet, alcohol, lifestyle, those things are very easily managed, changed, and probably play a part in this role. And I just want to tell people that just like, anything we talk about, there are always exciting changes coming down the pike, but you can't take advantage of those if you don't gain some knowledge. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in learning more about this to reach out to a fertility expert like Dr. Kucherov and see, just gain some knowledge and see what you need to know in order to take the next step. Don't make it into this enormous, barrier that it's so complicated and so expensive that you won't be able to do it. Just dip your toe in the water and find out a little bit more and then see where that takes you. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Francis, can we get your phone number?
Of course, Jess. You can reach us at 413-773-3333.
And you can visit hugyourmoney.com. Dr. Alexander Kucherov, Dr. Rahaim, thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another edition of Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor on WHMP.
Will you help us spread the word about financial fitness? Please like, subscribe, and choose all. Thank you.